Already done a Dalek video? Might as well do a Cyberman video. Hello everyone, I'm Charlie from Dr. Wen, and as you can probably guess from this slide and the thumbnail of this video, today I will be ranking all 9 TV stories that include Cybermen from Doctor Who, specifically New Who, so the revived era of Doctor Who since 2005, and I'm not including TV stories that only briefly include them, like the Pandorica Opens the Big Bang, just the 9 main ones in my opinion. So they are the two-parters Rise of the Cybermen Age of Steel, Army of Ghosts Doomsday, Dark Water Death in Heaven, World Enough and Time the Doctor Falls, and Ascension of the Cybermen The Timeless Children, alongside the 4 solo Cyberman episodes, Closing Time, The Next Doctor, Nightmare in Silver, and Time of the Doctor. I hope you enjoyed this video, and before I start it, some of the lower down ones, I don't not like most of these episodes. Only my bottom spot I'd say I don't like. Also, only 50% of you are subscribed, I saw from YouTube Studio. Obviously, even if I wanted to force you to subscribe, but I wouldn't be able to anyway. But it would really help me as a small YouTuber if you did subscribe to the channel. And if you want more content like this, keep watching till the end and check out some of my other content and subscribe. Thanks. Let's start off the main portion of this video. With 9th place, we have Closing Time, which I've given a 5.5. The main reason why it's so low is that it's quite a bland episode and it's not very memorable. Craig isn't as good as he was before. I preferred him in The Lodger, definitely. And I don't know, it just takes away The Lodger, it was a very funny episode, but this one just wasn't. They just kind of threw Craig in to make it a filler episode, and I don't know, there's just something kind of off about this episode. It doesn't really explain where or how the Cyberman spaceship got there. It kind of leaves that unexplained, but I do quite like the design actually. You know, all the broken parts of the Cybermen. I think that's really creative, and it doesn't really explain how the Cybermen got there in the first place anyway, so I don't know, it just doesn't really make that much sense. The baby is really unnecessary, and I don't really find it funny when he tries to communicate with it. It's just a bit silly, and as I said before, it's filler. It's definitely a filler episode. Anyway, let's move on to The Next Doctor, which I've given a 6.8. This is the first episode on this list that I'd say I like, at least a little bit. The cyber controller that you see there with the black face and the brain that you can see, I think that's quite a weird design. I don't really know whether I like it or not. But I do quite like the huge Cyberman that's at the end. I thought that was a really creative design and probably took a good chunk out of their CGI budget. It's a very easy watch, just quite a nice episode to put on the telly, and you don't have to concentrate as much to understand the plot. This is more of a character piece with Jackson Lake thinking he's a doctor. That's why it's called The Next Doctor, but it does kind of not exactly disappoint people, but because of the title, I'm guessing everyone thought that it would include the 11th Doctor, but nope, it was just a random person who thought he was the Doctor. Next up we have 7th place, which is Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. I've also given this an 8.8. This is the very first introduction of the Cybermen in New Who, and I like where they took them. Instead of making them from Mondus or any of the classic planets that they're from, I quite like how they shifted it and went to a parallel universe, only in the 2nd series, which is impressive, and have the Cybermen be created there, but a different version. John Lumick is a good villain and is very interesting. I do quite like the whole I do quite like the whole scene where he becomes a Cyberman himself. I thought that was quite good, like the Cybermen overthrowing their creator. And I don't know, the Cybermen are pretty meh design, not the best design, could have been better, especially for the introduction of them. It has a great cliffhanger where the Doctor's saying, "But we surrender," and the Cybermen don't really care. And I do quite like Parallel Earth, as I said before, and this is the episode where Mickey left the TARDIS, except he does return in Army of Ghosts Doomsday, and then again in Stolen Earth Journey's End, so it's not really that sad, because, you know, the creators already knew that he'd be coming back. In 6th place we have some really good episodes. We have Time of the Doctor, which I've also given an 8.8. First off, this is a regeneration episode, and I don't know, it's not the best regeneration. He just kind of is, unlike the 9th and 10th Doctor's regenerations, where loads of regeneration energy was shooting out their arms and head. This one just kind of, oh, I sneezed too hard, I'm now Peter Capaldi. That's sort of what it was like. The wooden Cyberman does look pretty stupid with the flamethrower. I think it just is ridiculous and shouldn't have been a Cyberman episode. I talked about this in a different video, I think, ranking Dalek stories. Go and check that out, I'll leave a card for it here. It's actually a brilliant story though, with Trenzalore and him spending 900 years there while Clara kind of visits him twice, and there is a couple of unexplained things like why they're in Trenzalore in the first place, which I think is a really fitting Christmas special and very easy, heartwarming watch. And this also brings back lots of other things from the 8th Doctor's, the 11th Doctor's era, like the giant cracks in the sky and Amy and things like that. And it was a really nice conclusion to the 11th Doctor's era. Not the best though. In 5th place we have Nightmare in Silver, which I've given a 9. I think this really doesn't deserve the hate that it gets. I do agree with lots of people on Reddit and YouTube though, saying it should have been a 2-parter. I think Closing Time shouldn't have existed, and this... Not Closing Time, sorry. I think the Crimson Horror shouldn't have existed, and part 1 of this should have taken its place. The modern Cyberman design is really good. I like where they took the Cybermen, especially like a semi-conversion of the Doctor himself. The Doctor could have done more. He was just playing a chess game with his other self, which I thought was quite interesting actually, and it kind of questions the morality of the Doctor in a way. This also has a pretty creepy setting, the whole abandoned theme park thing. I think it would have been even more creepy if it was set at night. The final battle is quite good. I do like the weapons that they used. I think that would have taken quite a bit of CGI to do. And Clara is solo in this, and I always like it where a companion is solo. Not necessarily the Doctor Light episode, just where the companion's off doing their own thing. The Doctor could have done more in this episode. Overall, it's a very strong episode actually, and doesn't really deserve the hate it gets. Next up we have 4th place, Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children. Some people could argue that The Haunting of Villa Diodati is the episode before this, which incorporates elements from it, and some people are basically saying that it's a 3-parter. I don't really think that, because the stories are so separate that it doesn't really make... I don't know, I don't think it really makes a 3-parter. The Timeless Child reveal, I don't actually mind it that much. I think it's interesting that the Doctor isn't actually from Gallifrey this entire time, and is secretly from an unknown race. Personally, I like to think that she's from future Gallifrey, creating a bootstrap paradox, but yeah, I don't really think this deserves the hate it gets. Ascension of the Cybermen is certainly better, and if it was on its own, I'd probably give it somewhere around a 9.6, and The Timeless Children around an 8.7, but the average of those, yeah, I'd say it's around a 9.3. The new design is really good. It incorporates a mix of classic Who with the head and new Who with the body. It's kind of a mix of the Earthshock design from the 5th Doctor's era and the Nightmare in Silver design from the 11th Doctor's era. It's a very fast-paced story, but in a good way, and the first part is actually really good with the battle against the Cybermen. It's brilliant. It has an awesome cliffhanger as well, with the Master coming out of that portal to Gallifrey, saying, get ready because everything's about to change. I thought that was really good, and I had to wait an entire week to find out what was going to happen. I was counting down the seconds until this episode. In 3rd place we have Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, the only episode where the Cybermen go to war with the Daleks, and it's brilliant. It's the season 2 finale, and I don't know, I I really like this episode. I've given it a 9.4, and I quite like the concept of them having a war with the Daleks. It's kind of a Doctor Who fan's dream, to be honest, seeing the Daleks fight the Cybermen, and I'm really surprised they didn't do it in Classic Who. I think this would have made for quite a classic story, especially with the 5th, 6th or 7th Doctor. Rose's departure is quite sad, although I didn't really like Rose in this series. I think she should have departed in Parting of the Ways, and Martha taken over for this series. Either way, her departure was really sad, but not one of the saddest parts of New Who, I'd say. Mickey's return was really unexpected. His arrival from Parallel Earth, I just kind of saw him and was just like, oh, I recognise that face. Oh, it's Mickey. And I thought that was quite good. I do quite like the twist where all those ghosts are actually Cybermen, and this introduces Torchwood properly. Even though Jack Harkness isn't in it, sadly, but this does introduce Torchwood, because we kind of were teased from it by one of the previous episodes in this series, Tooth and Claw. This is a really, really strong finale. Next up, we have second place, Dark Water, Death in Heaven, which I've given a 9.5. Lots of people I know don't particularly have many strong feelings towards this episode. I disagree. I love this episode. The new Cyberman design is brilliant. It's a lot like the Ascension of the Cybermen design, with a mix of classic and new, but Ascension, I think, emphasises that even more. Danny's death and cyber conversion is really sad, and I think this is one of the darkest stories that the universe has probably ever done, with the Cybermen converting dead people, and the whole thing with Don't Cremate Me in the Nethersphere. It's just really interesting and very dark. And the Master reveal is awesome. Spoilers, it's Missy, the person you can see on the left. She's a Master. I know some people who've recently watched this episode, and I'm sure they probably weren't expecting that unless they'd seen things about it previously. Anyway, I really like this episode. The whole scene with Danny as a Cyberman giving orders to all those other Cybermen to stop Missy's plan is really good, and I just love every second of this episode. Finally, we have first place, World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls. This is my third favourite episode of New Who, and I've given it a 9.7. It's the 12th Doctor's penultimate episode, the finale of Series 10, directly before my favourite episode of all time, Twice Upon a Time. The Mondasian Cybermen return in this, and we hadn't even seen them since the First Doctor's era. They were only in one First Doctor story, and that was the 10th Planet, his regeneration episode. And this is arguably a horror story, with the kind of bags over their heads, and conversion into Cybermen was really creepy actually, and I quite like how we get to see sort of like the equivalent of Genesis of the Daleks, but Genesis of the Cybermen. I thought that was really good. It's a multi-master story, and it's brilliant, seeing the chemistry between the two masters, past and present, and it sets up Twice Upon a Time really well, because the 1st and 12th Doctor both were about to regenerate because of the Mondasian Cybermen, and we've got that cliffhanger at the end where he meets his past self. Bill's send-off is also really sad, and because she gets converted into a Mondasian Cyberman, but with lots of companions, she ends up coming back again and going back to life, which I don't really like for lots of these companions, especially Rose and not necessarily Martha, but with Amy as well. I don't know, so that just doesn't really sit right with me. That's my only minor criticism towards this episode, though. Either way, this is a phenomenal story, and I love it. Next time. Where does the Ruth Doctor fit into the Doctor's timeline? Is she before the First Doctor, in between the 2nd and 3rd Doctors, or is she 14th or even a future version of the Doctor? Let's find out tomorrow. See you then, and goodbye.